afternoon. Welcome to another episode of What's Cooking in the Kitchen at Carroll Lutheran Village. I'm Chef Kevin, and today I'm going to explain to you a little bit about a beef tenderloin, and then on Monday we will be running a grilled beef tenderloin sandwich smothered with mushrooms and a red wine demi-glaze sauce. So what I have in front of me right now is a beef tenderloin. This is referred to as a peeled side muscle on, or in the industry they refer to it as a PSMO, PSMO. And what it is, a lot of the external fat is left, and then I will show you later on the side muscle, which is also referred to as the chain. There's a lot of connective tissue and skin, so we'll be peeling that off and setting that aside to trim it up for beef tips, or you can grind it up for stew beef or hamburger or other things. So with a tenderloin, there's multiple areas on it you want to discuss. This front end is referred to as the head or the vein end. That's usually a little bit more of the connective tissue. In through the center here is what would refer to as the Chateaubriand or center cuts. And then you come down here towards where it gets thinner is the tail. And again, a lot of that gets cut up for beef stroganoff, kebabs, things like that. So in working with this, the first thing I like to do is take a towel, or in this case, we use these disposable white cloths. I like to just press it down, getting as much of the blood off as possible. It's less messy, as well as it gives you a better ability to get a grip on the meat, and it's not going to slide around on you as much. And as I was taught many years ago, that the less you use a knife on it, the better off you are. The less you waste, the less apt you are to get rid of some good cuts of meat. So the first thing I do is I like to just take it, I work on peeling back a lot of the skin. As you can see, it comes down pretty easily, just running it down, come across this way. This fat here will, again, it peels right back. Set that aside. And now I'll take my knife right along this seam here. And what I do is just come right across evenly and removing most of that outer connective tissue. Here is the chain. And again, if you just run your thumb right through it, it just pulls right off. You can get that down pretty close. And I'll take my knife and just come right along into that seam and taking it off right up by the head, leaving me with just a little bit more connective tissue and some fat right in here. Set that aside for now. Now what you see here is referred to as silver skin. That's also what attaches the muscle onto the bone, almost like the ligaments would come up, so that when it contracts, that's how the muscle is able to move around the bone. Now the tenderloin is actually almost, if you think on a person, the outer side of your back. It's used mostly for the animal to support its back straight, so that's why it's very tender. On the other side of that is the ribeye, which is why on a porterhouse steak is part ribeye, part beef tenderloin, and then you get down into that from there. So now to remove the silver skin, I just take my knife tip, go down, work towards the front, and then I'm going to cut back, angling my knife up a little bit towards the silver skin, and you hopefully don't lose too much of the meat as you peel it back. And you just work across the whole thing. And again, the silver skin is a cut, or is a tissue that doesn't really break down with cooking. Moist cooking, it will break down a little bit, but the more of it you can remove, the more tender and the better part it's going to be. Just work it right on back. And then in here is a little bit of fat. I'll take the back of the knife and just scrape it back. So I can actually see what I'm going to be trying to cut off and remove. Just a little, like so there. Now up in here on the head, it gets into a weird shape and you'll get connective tissue that runs through. I generally like to just take that off on that side and I'll set it aside, I'll trim that down, and again, we'll cube that up for later on. And in here, I like to just take this. That's pretty much all just some fat right in here. Lay it down. Just a very shallow, light cut, just making it easier to get a little more of a grip as it is helping to just peel it back. And then on the bottom side, as you can see, these indentations here is where it actually rested against the bones for the ribeye. And there's a little bit of silver skin that will usually sit on this side. You want to look for, and again, just quick cut, taking that off. And in here, I just like to lightly cut off some of this fat, because fat is also the moisture. And as you see when you cut into the tenderloin, how lean and how little fat there really is internally on this. So not necessarily a bad thing to leave some of the fat on for the flavor and for the moisture it will give. And once you've got it pretty well cleaned up, I would actually go through and cut the steaks. Now what we'll be doing on this is, because we're going to grill it, it's going to be a very quick, almost like a minute steak. I'm just going to take this very tip of the tenderloin off again and set that aside, and we'll use that for a stroganoff or something along those lines. And just cutting them down 1/4 to about 1/2 inch thick. And you can see it's a very lean cut, and as I start coming down here, you'll get closer towards what you would do. Now if I were to cut it larger for grilling, here is now I have that filet mignon that you all love up in the hospitality dining room. And again, now you got a much better look as to how lean this cut is. Again, in choice meats, you want to see some of that marbling. That is part of the standard that they're looking for in grading the animals and going through with that. But again, just a couple more quick little cuts. And I'm going to grill these off, and I'll show you how to put the sandwich together. Okay, I have now grilled off my meat, and now what I'll be doing for the topping is going to take some wild exotic mushrooms, and we're going to saute those very quickly. I used a little bit of onion and garlic. And just get them cooked down a little bit, get some of the moisture out, and then just get them softened up. And now, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could add the sauce to the mushrooms to further cook it down a little bit. I prefer to put the mushrooms down, and then we'll be topping it with the sauce. I cook them separately, because that way as they sit, any of the liquid that comes out of the mushrooms will stay with the mushrooms and not thin down the sauce. So now that the mushrooms are done, I'm just going to place them on top of the beef. And what we have is sliced cremini or baby portobellos. I believe there's some wood ear and a little bit of shiitake mushrooms in this mix. And now I'm going to take some of the red wine demi-glaze. Just use that to glaze the pan a little bit, make sure we get all the mushroom flavor into it. And with it nice and hot, just going to pour it over the steak, which was sitting on one slice of bread. And now you have an open-faced smothered tenderloin steak sandwich. Enjoy, and we look forward to hearing from you on Monday for the cafe and in the bistro. Thank you.